Welcome to Life with Beth and Court, where life is always interesting,
We sold everything to live on the road full time.
despite having zero experience.
Now we bring you lessons, laughs, and stories from the road.
Buckle in for an entertaining ride. Welcome back to another episode of Life with Beth and Court. I'm Beth,
I'm Court.
and today we are talking about what it's like to be sober at 31.
Yes. And it's not you, it's me that's sober.
Correct.
And I am no longer 31, I'm 26.
Wow.
Mhm.
Age defying.
That-
What's your secret?
That Joyum serum that I've been using from Plexus, it just takes you all the way back.
Oh.
Mhm.
Okay, so you've been sober -5 years?
Correct.
Oh,
That is
okay.
correct.
Well, that's not very inspiring. So, in all seriousness, we are talking about sobriety today, which is not a topic that I thought we would ever be talking about.
No, me either.
And I'm excited to ask you questions about what it's like because I think that it'll be very helpful for a lot of people to hear this
Mm-hmm.
in the same way that it was very helpful for people to hear the depression episode.
Yeah.
There was a lot of people who self-identified with what you went through, your thoughts, feelings, situations, all of that. You had a ton of support. There's a lot of people who reached out after we released that episode, and I have a sneaking suspicion it may be the same when we talk about sobriety.
Maybe. And we should probably start by clarifying that for me, sobriety means alcohol because you can be sober from a lot of things. And I feel like it's important to distinguish that for me, it was alcohol because I've never done drugs because I'm too scared. Never even smoked weed. Too scared.
Yeah, me either. That was a weird fun fact that we had together when we first met.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think when people hear that, they're like, but do you want to? Like, have you ever thought about it? And I'm like, no, because I would do it if I had an interest in doing it. So you're not going to be the first that gets to like introduce us to weed. I think this will like, as we talk into being sober, I think it will explain why it's probably good that I don't do drugs anyway. So
Yes.
let's just move back into alcohol.
Let's just talk about what your general relationship with alcohol was as, I don't know, a teenager. Did you drink before you were 21? Did you start young? Did you have a lot of alcohol use in your 20s? Just walk us through what your relationship with alcohol was.
Sure. Before that, I will say as of today, I have been sober for a year, 6 months, and I think like 43 days.
Wow.
Yeah, and-
Congratulations.
Yeah. And for me, I measure the big marks. Like I like the year. I like the year and 3 months, the year and 4 months. Like I don't go by days. I like the months and the years and a half. So the other day we were laying in bed and I was like, I wonder when my year and a half sobriety anniversary will be coming up. And I looked at my tracker I have on my phone and I was like, and you were like, what? And I was like, it already happened and I didn't even know.
I missed it.
And it was really exciting because I was like, oh, I did it. Like I hit the year and a half mark. And now the next mark is 2 years for me, which is crazy.
That is crazy.
Anyway, thought I'd lay the groundwork there before we went into my journey with alcohol. So I was a very good child. And if you were to ask my mother if that would be true, she would say yes. And she described my sister and I as Courtney was the angel, that if I said, Courtney, don't draw outside the lines of this paper, I would be an angel and not do it. Whereas my sister would just color all over the walls. So I'd like to say from a young age, I like to be good and follow the rules, which for those of you that know me as an adult, that's probably pretty confusing. Anyway, so I didn't drink in high school. I never drank as a teenager. There were kids in school that did drink and they would like party. And I actually hated alcohol. I remember taking my mom's Captain Morgan. That was her drink of choice. And it was like that brown caramel color. And so I would dump her alcohol down the sink because I did not like it.
Right.
I would also get her cigarettes wet because I found out that they were not usable after that. And I'd be like, oh, they fell
Not
in the sink.
usable.
And then eventually I would like be real and be like, no, I did on purpose. I
Well-
spent a lot of my time grounded.
I will say that you mentioned before that you were a good child,
Mm-hmm.
but that only lasted until you were about 13, and then you
then
discovered,
hormones kicked in. Yeah.
the moans.
Then the moans moved in, and my mom was like, I will send you to juvenile boot camp. And I was like, I would like to see you try. So that's about the time I started like messing with her cigarettes and dumping out her alcohol. I never drank in high school. I think the first time I drank, I was 20 years old. I was at college and I was hanging out with the Maritime boys.
them boys.
And I remember being really scared to drink. Like, same with weed and drugs. Like, I feel scared to be out of control and I don't know what to expect. And I remember they were like, it's not that bad. Like, you know, we'll all watch you and take care of you. And I'm like,
Oh, I'm sure a bunch of Maritime college boys. Oh, I'm sorry, pretty girl. If you get drunk, I'll watch you and take care of you.
Yeah. And so my first drink, we had Little Caesars pizza, of course.
Obviously.
And it was Pop-Off vodka with
Gross.
pink lemonade
Gross.
by Minute Maid in a wine glass. Yeah. It was disgusting.
Did you have gut rot?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was my first time drinking. And then after that, I think on my 21st birthday, I like had daiquiris, strawberry daiquiris with my mom at her house. Like, it was very low key because my birthday is in January. So my friends that were actually like allowed to drink, that hadn't happened yet for them. I was a January birthday. No one else was actually 21 yet. So
Right.
21 through like 23, I would like drink at parties and stuff, but it was never like a reoccurring thing for me. Like, I didn't drink all the time. I never skipped class because I was drinking. But then I think when I was 23 is when I like partied hard. Like, we call it Slut Summer for a reason because it existed. Family, if you hear this, I'm just being honest. I think that was the
You were
first.
very promiscuous during a summer.
Yes.
Yes.
And actually, even my relationship before that summer, there was a lot of drinking. Now that I think about it, because he was a big drinker. And so that's what we would do is like we'd have parties. Maybe I did drink a lot. I don't really know. So basically, I didn't like alcohol when I wasn't allowed to have it. It really bothered me. I didn't like it. And then college, like I dabbled in it. And then there was like a party hard phase after that. And I drank and drank and drank. And then I met my next boyfriend and he liked to drink and party. So we drank and partied, drank and partied, drank and partied. So I would say from like 20. Yeah, I'm remembering some college parties now. I would say from 22, 23 to like 26 or 27.
Yeah, I feel like my college experience was like, it was that, but it was shortened. It was just like 6 months of really hard partying. And I think it was right after I quit the college hockey team. And I just went to every party I could because, like you, I didn't drink when I was a teenager. I waited till I was 21.
Do people drink when they're teenagers?
Oh, yeah.
Like,
high school
define
parties?
teenager, because I think of like a 13-year-old when you say 13.
No, like 15, 16, 17.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I was such a good child.
I had people in my school that would always be like, "You're so fun. You should drink with us." And I'm like, if I'm already fun, I
Why
don't
do I
understand
drink?
why I need to drink with you.
Yeah.
And I was very focused on wanting to go to the Olympics. So that was the only reason. Well, I didn't really have an interest in alcohol, but like for me, that was the biggest thing that kept me away.
Yeah.
And then when that dream died, I just drank a lot. And then one day I woke up in someone else's house and there was like people like on the table and asleep on the stairs.
Yeah.
And I was like on a couch with someone and I was like, what is happening?
Yeah.
And then it just stopped. It was just like an accelerated version of what you went through.
Yeah.
Okay, so you partied hard in most of your 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happened?
I got a big kid job and I was working at the Y and I was a childcare director and my life was super freaking stressful and like mentally I didn't have the energy to keep up with partying all of the time.
Yeah,
And
it kind of
then-
takes a lot.
It does. Like as you get older, it's so freaking exhausting. And then that is when I don't know what happens. Like I've heard people say your metabolism changes or whatever, but like my body just started to get so pissed off.
Or your organs fail.
Yeah,
One of the
maybe.
two. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I actually, when I was seeing a holistic doctor for a while, she said my number one organ that was like not functioning well was my liver. And
Makes
she's
a lot
like,
of
you
sense.
literally have the liver of an 80-year-old man. And at the time, I was like, I don't know why. Like, I didn't party hard. And now, as I'm talking out loud, I'm like, yes, I did. So, what would happen? So basically, in tandem, as I was doing holistic care with a doctor, I was working on reducing food allergies and getting healthy. And as I was getting my body more healthy, my tolerance for alcohol went down significantly. Like I used to be really proud I could drink anyone under the table. Yeah, I did do a lot of drinking.
Yeah, that's a
it's
good
all flashing
accomplishment,
back
yeah.
right now. Yeah.
Well, I will say this too, though, because you and I just discovered this recently that our minds do not remember things accurately. I mean, like,
Yeah.
what we remember, we're starting to edit videos for something coming up.
Yeah. I was like,
And-
please don't spoil this.
We're editing videos right now, though, and in our heads, we have told the same stories of the journey we've taken to
Mhm.
sell everything we own, get a trailer, get a truck, blah, blah, blah. But then we watch the videos and we're like, oh, that's not what happened at all.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting because it's super easy in our minds to say, oh, I didn't party because, you know, in your head, like, I'm sure what I didn't party meant to you was like, oh, well, I wasn't blackout drunk every weekend and I didn't drink and miss my shifts at work and all of
Yeah.
that. But you can still party a lot without it being.
Yeah, it's like all flashing back right now, actually. So, as my body started to become healthier, it could not handle alcohol like it used to. And the sequence of events eventually became when I would drink, I would be drunk for 2 days because my liver couldn't filter out the alcohol. So it would stay trapped in my body. And then once it slowly and painfully left, I was hungover for like 3 to 4 days sometimes.
Well, not painfully like passing a kidney stone.
That's
but
kind of
just-
how it felt on the inside. That's actually what I thought of. Like it's weird because the hangover was so extreme. And so I would be drunk for 2 days and then hungover for 3 to 4. And I finally realized that I was severely, severely intolerant to yeast, which is in
Mhm.
beer and wine. And also, what's the other thing? Gluten. There's a ton of gluten in beer. So anyway,
And you don't do well with sugar.
yeah. Oh, yeah. That was the other thing. So basically, I was poisoning myself. And I thought, like, how do other people not get this sick? So anyway, fast forward through that. So what's really interesting is before I quit drinking altogether, I was drinking the least I ever had in my entire life.
Huh.
Like, I would have a drink maybe every couple of weeks. Like, I can only think of a couple of times a month, and I never had a problem drinking when I was by myself. Like, if I was at home and I wanted to have a drink, like, that was never the issue.
So if you were drinking the least you had ever drank, then what was the impetus that kind of inspired you to stop drinking?
What does impetus mean?
I think it means what was the reason?
Catalyst?
No, hold on.
Okay.
Hey Siri, what's the definition of impetus? The force or energy with which a body moves. What? The force that makes something happen or happen more quickly.
Maybe.
Yeah.
We'll roll with it. It just caught me off guard.
Okay, well, let's say it this way. What was the inspiration to stop drinking if you were drinking the least you had ever drank and you weren't having an issue with like binge drinking on your own at home? Or,
Yeah.
you know, a lot of times I think what we think of if someone's struggling with alcohol is like maybe they're sneaking drinks or drinking on
Yeah.
their own.
Because I actually dated someone who is an alcoholic, and he would pride himself on the fact, like, I'm not an alcoholic because I can go weeks without drinking. And he and I actually went a whole summer without drinking. And so to me, a drinking problem was someone who was like sneaking drinks or binging all the time.
Or couldn't go without
yeah,
it.
or couldn't go without and would have withdrawals. So for me, it was a combination of two things. So when I drank by myself, I was fine. Like I would have 1 or 2 at most and I would be okay. But when I would go out with other people,
Ooh, Crazy Courtney came out.
oh, Crazy Courtney came out, I would drink so much. And it's simply because when I'm in that environment, I just kept drinking and drinking and drinking because it's part of the experience. So if you're hanging out with friends for like 3 or 4 hours, you hear this often, like, okay, who wants another drink? Or I've got the next round. And for me, once I had a couple in me and I was being social, like I'm already a very fun person. I
That
am
is true.
level Courtney. And that's probably, what did we decide?
Your
when we-
level Courtney.
Yeah. It's like a level of its own. And when we
Oh,
were,
I see. Like level 10, but level Courtney. Okay.
and when we were in Virginia with Heather and Albert and Kristen, I joked and I said basically like level Courtney is the equivalent to 2.5 drinks already. And so like when you add in alcohol to level Courtney,
Right.
you're like upping it to 4 or 5.
Right, because at the time, what you were explaining is we were all on a pedal bike.
Mm-hmm.
We were pedaling up and down the coast of the ocean,
Mm-hmm.
and we were singing Backstreet Boys and Celine Dion, as you do.
Yeah.
And you were completely sober,
And I
and you were
started it.
leading it.
Yeah.
yeah. And
And
then the
then-
rest of us only. I mean, we weren't hammered by any means. We had a couple drinks or whatever, but then as it started wearing off, we started losing our energy. But you were still at level Courtney.
Yeah. I think Kristen got to 2.5 drinks and she's like, is this what it's like to be you all the time? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, this is awesome. So social drinking was a definite problem.
I will say this too about you. Even when it's not alcohol, you consume a lot of liquid when you're being social.
It was the combination of social drinking and then noticing addictive behaviors in my personality. So I think when people think of addictive behaviors, they think, oh, it must be like when you're addicted to drugs or you're addicted to alcohol. But having addictive behaviors can be so much as drinking too much coffee. And that was a problem for me at one point. I would drink coffee. I would drink and drink and drink. And when you drink and drink and drink, usually it's a sign of diabetes or that there's an
I
addictive
think that's
behavior.
in dogs, not humans.
No, it is in humans. It is in
I think
humans.
it's in golden retrievers.
No. And so it was the same for coffee or like even like when I really liked a song, I would listen to it on repeat over and over and over, like this, repetitive behavior, this addictive behavior. Or I struggled with binge eating for a while where I would eat a lot of food, even though I didn't need to eat that much, or I would eat food that I shouldn't have. And there are some traces of addiction that I've observed in my family. So between that and like my behaviors, I was like, okay, there is some addiction floating around in here. And if that's really what's happening, and I'm also not able to control my social drinking, this is a problem. And then the breaking point for me, so I noticed these 2 things. And I noticed it very clearly because, like I said, it was few and far in between when I would drink, but when I would, shit would go sideways. And before I go into like the incident that made me decide to stop drinking, you and I had some major issues.
Yeah, speaking of shit going sideways.
Yeah. I don't know if you want to speak to that a little bit.
Well, I think the shortest version of saying this is had you continued to drink, I'm not sure that we would be the dynamic duo we still are.
Probably not. When you and I were living together, I was also using drinking to cope. So like before I weaned off and I was drinking the least I ever had, I was using drinking prior to that as a negative coping skill.
There were a couple incidents that I think we can kind of talk about in jest now. They were kind of a sore subject for a while, but there were several incidents when, like you said, it was really when it was the potion of other humans added into the mix. And I could tell when you were drinking, like your behaviors and patterns kind of shifting.
I became super nasty, aggressive, and manipulative. I'll just throw that out there.
Yeah, you're just not that pleasant. And you would particularly get very aggressive slash... it was like you wanted me to like, I don't know, like you were almost a daredevil where you're like, bet you won't.
Yeah.
You would get very like in my face and I'm like, I don't need to be bet against.
Which again, like I'm that daredevil personality to begin with, like level Courtney.
But you're not an asshole.
No, but when you add alcohol in, that's when it takes a turn. And I would like, so at one point, it was out of control. It was a problem. And we would have to like set rules of how many drinks I would have.
Mm-hmm.
I won't say you set that rule. I would set that rule for myself because
yeah, and that's because we had a couple
conversations,
very
yeah.
negative experiences.
And so my rule would be like 2, right? And so there were times that I would only have 2 and I would be like, oh my God, I'm so proud of myself. Like I only had a couple, which big red flag. If you're listening and you're proud of yourself that you only drank 2, the fact that I had to celebrate that I only had 2 means there was a problem. I just didn't realize it at the time. And then the other part of it was I would become like super sneaky. And so if I had to and I wanted to have more than 2, I would like hide it from you. And I would have people like switch out my empty cans so it looked like I was drinking the same one.
Meanwhile, I noticed your behavior getting more and more elevated, and I'd be like, "That's not your second drink." And then we would get in an argument,
and I'd be like, "Did you see me get another drink?"
And she'd be like, "I'm totally fine, though. I'm totally fine." And I'm like, "You're totally fine, except I can tell the difference in your shift in behavior and language and attitude and all of that stuff." So, basically, by the time we realized there was a problem, it wasn't that long of trying a limit on drinks before you just went totally sober. I would say the top events that stick in my head would be the time, speaking of being sneaky, the time that you insisted that you were fine and you wanted to drive. And I said, absolutely not. And you almost became like a cat where you were smacking things off the counters like in our apartment, and then you wanted me to give you your keys, and I said no. And basically we went back and forth, and I had taken all the keys, all the sets that we had, and then you had grabbed them from me at one point, and I was wrestling them from your hands, and you let go, and you're like, fine, I'm going on a walk. And I didn't realize it until you were like all the way down the stairs. I was like, man, that fight really turned a corner. Like, she just gave me her keys. That was good. And then all of a sudden I was like, there's no way drunk Courtney would have given me her keys. She's up to something. And then I heard your car start, and I was like, motherfucker. She took her car key off this key ring. So I sprinted down 3 levels of stairs, and I said, get out of the car right now. And you were like, nope. And you were very...
We're laughing. It was
not
very
we can laugh about it now, but we were in
situation,
counseling.
But like we're both picturing drunk Courtney who's like sassy times 10 million.
Sassy times 10. And I was like, get out of the car. I'm not letting you drive. You backed up and you left me no choice but to get on the hood of your car.
Yeah, you
and
totally Supermaned it onto the hood.
I grabbed onto the hood, and you were like, get off my car. And I was like, if you want to...
Can we just pause and mention this was in an apartment complex?
Oh, yeah. Our neighbors probably think we're definitely
around.
crazy.
Yeah.
And so I'm hanging off the hood of your car. You're backed up, ready to put it into drive, and you kept saying, get off the car. And I said, I will not let you endanger yourself or others because you are not in any capacity to drive right now. And you said, but I want to. And I said, that is not happening. And then I told you the only way I got you to come back in is because I said, I'm calling the cops now.
Ooh,
and I pulled out my phone, hung onto the hood with one hand still.
It's kind of impressive.
I got my phone out, and at this point we had been fighting and arguing since
like 2 hours.
Midnight.
Yeah.
And so now it's like 2 a.m. And instead I called our counselor. I called Counselor Dan, and I said, hello. And he was like, hey, what's up? And I was like, why are you answering my call at 2 a.m.? He's like, oh, my brother and I are playing video games. And I was like, oh, well, thanks. I'm on the hood of a car, and Courtney is drunk, and I don't know how to get her out of the driver's seat. And you, at that point, thought I was on the phone with the police.
Yeah.
And you pulled back in.
I actually don't remember that part. But
that does not shock me. And so because you thought I was calling the cops, you pulled back into the parking spot, and we went to sleep. And in the morning, you woke up and saw all that had been done to the apartment.
The cat swatting.
There was makeup everywhere. There were shoes everywhere. There was a lot of things everywhere, and makeup.
This was like the extreme version. This wasn't like a regular occurrence, but there were some bad times.
This is I'm saying my top
trauma.
Yeah, I guess that my top trauma. Yeah,
drunk Courtney moments.
That one, and I remember trying to like snap you out of it because I kept saying it's me. Hey, look at me, it's me, because you had never treated me that way.
Yeah,
never. And so I couldn't understand. I was like, what's happening now?
Was this entangled with depression?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, this very much like so. Yes. Yeah. So I was trying to say like, hey, hi, it's me. You love me. We love each other. I don't know what's happening. You are looking at me like you've got daggers in your eyes that are made for my soul, and I need you to stop fighting me right now. So that experience wasn't good. We ended up in
counseling,
4 hours of counseling the next day on a Sunday.
I was hungover as fuck.
Yep.
I remember that.
Yep. You couldn't drive. I know that. You were.
Yeah, I was still drunk.
Yeah, you were still drunk.
It stayed in my system.
Yeah. And then, so that took a bit to recover from.
Was that like a group part? Was that a social drinking night?
It sure was.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it sure was. And then to add to the funniness of it, that's not actually funny.
Yeah, we keep giggling.
Kristen will appreciate this part. This was the night that everyone was
you
out.
Almost shit your pants.
And the night had started. I think it was a friend's birthday, and the night had started and at a restaurant, and we had gotten fried pickles.
Deep fried pickles. Blue Tractor.
And neither of us can handle gluten or dairy very well. And so I ate the fried pickles. We go to this other establishment.
Which at that point, I was gone. Like, I don't even remember going to another establishment.
Oh, you know what? And that was the part. So I'm over there eating fried pickles like a homegirl. And Courtney went to the bar to get more shots. And I looked up and there was a gaggle of men around you. And you held up $100 bill and kind of waved it at me. And the guys were all like, hey, and I was like, what's happening right now? And then you walked back over and you handed me the $100 and you said, I just took that guy's $100. And I was like, did he give that to you? And you said, yeah. And I was like, why? And you go, because I asked him to. And I was like, wait, what? Some man just gave you $100? And you're like, yeah, it's a bachelor party. They're all revved up. And I asked him for his money and he gave it to me. And I was like, oh my God, what is happening? And I was like, go give him his money back. And you're like, no, he gave it to me. So that's how the night started.
Yeah.
With rounds of shots at that bar. And then we went to another establishment and it just kept getting more and more wild. And meanwhile, while you were on the top floor drinking with the people that we were there with, I was on the bottom level shitting because my stomach was in knots and I was trying to not gas out every bathroom in the nearby vicinity. So I was trying to find a private place and you were like, woo! And I was like, I need to go home and you have clearly had enough. And you were like, no, I love this. And then everyone we were with was like, no, we love when Courtney drinks. Like, this is the Courtney we miss. And I was like, all right, well, y'all can hang with the Courtney you miss because I'm about to shit myself again. And I am not for doing this 5 times in a public bathroom. So I'm leaving. And as soon as I left, you called me and said, I need you to come back and get me because I want to go home with you.
Sounds about right.
And so I turned around and I said, you have to be ready because I'm not kidding you. I might shit myself. And you were like, yeah, totally. So I get there and I was like, come out to the car. And you were like, no, come find me. And I was like, I don't know if I can hold all of my bowels right now. So I need you to come out here. Long story short, I ended up going in and finding you, extracting you. And then the rest of that night ensued. And
yeah,
it was, I would say, trauma time number 1.
Yeah, not good. So that's just a glimpse of some of what drunk Courtney would do. And like we said, that time was a little more intense because there was a depression episode happening simultaneously. But fast forward back to me realizing that I had some addictive behaviors and it ran in my family, and then that I had a problem with social drinking. So there were 2 major incidents. Well, one minor, one pretty major. So one was 4th of July. we went over to a friend's house and we were having drinks. And I think I was drinking like White Claw or Truly or something. And for me,
4th of July.
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And so for
I was thinking of
me,
a different
like Beth said, I can drink. I had to cut myself off from like bubbly waters, like non-alcoholic bubbly waters, because I would drink like 7 or 8 of them a day. And so now it's like a special treat that I allow myself to have once in a while because I would just slam them. So keep that in mind. And then I'm drinking Truly, which tastes exactly the same. There's just alcohol.
Yeah, which tastes like the fart of a Skittles.
Yeah. So I'm drinking these probably like 2 or 3. And the thing that happens is I start drinking so fast and I don't give myself time like for my body to be like, hey, dude, you're drunk right now. And here's the thing. I drink them so fast that other people who are socially drinking might be getting buzzed, but they're not drinking as quick as I am. But I think everyone's on my level. And so it just escalates very quickly. Got on a boat, went to a party across the lake with a bunch of like 24-year-olds and they had a homemade water slide down a giant ass hill down into the water, and you had to slide down in the water, and you had teams, and once you got in the water you had to get up, flip a cup, then drink the drink, and then like run back up the hill.
It
right?
was a combination of slip and slide and flip cup.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're the oldest people there
Yeah,
by
we were.
far.
By a decade.
By a decade. And they're like, who's in? And I'm like, I'll play. And Beth's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, it's a slip and slide. Why wouldn't I play? And I'm already like drunk at this point. So at one point, I found someone's Trulies in the fridge and I drank like 3 or 4 of them.
And imagine that this is like literally like stealing candy from a baby.
Yeah,
like these
it
are
was.
children in our like
Yeah,
they're like
Skittle water
they're
from
like
a child.
21, like
Yeah.
barely able to buy the stuff.
Yeah. And so I was like fucking trashed at this point. And so we rode back on the boat to the house and we were supposed to like finish our backyard that night.
Oh yeah.
And
I did.
You did. I had to nap on the couch. So this was like that was the most I had drank in a while because like I said, I was only drinking like 1 or 2 here and there by myself. And I was so sick. Sick for like 3 or 4 days. I was embarrassed.
This one also came with physical pain because the slip and slide that you were apparently too drunk at the time to understand would be very painful the next day.
Yeah.
I mean, we watched the first set of people go down and they came up with like scraped backs and
I didn't have any marks.
No, but do you remember you had to go to the chiropractor and she's
yeah.
like, what happened to your sacrum? Because when you went down that
I
slide,
jumped on my
like
butt.
you guys, you have to understand this hill that they like literally lined with like trash bags or something. Like
we have footage somewhere. Yeah.
But like it was super steep.
Yeah.
And it's all wet as it is for slip and slide. And it goes right into Lake Michigan, or not Lake Michigan, whatever lake we were on. And so the ending of it, already I was like, that will not feel good when you're going down that fast and you hit that board that's supposed to nicely ramp you into the lake.
Yeah.
Not to mention, when you watch Courtney go down the first time,
I just like to give a little
she just
hop.
like dropped down right on her ass. And I was like, oh my God, you are going to feel terrible tomorrow. And so sure enough, the next day you're like, why can I not move? Like, I feel like I just got hit by a bus. And I was like, well, you did drop down repeatedly on your butt.
Yeah.
In a giant big kid slip and slide.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't think I call that a minor incident because there was nothing I did that was like super embarrassing or I didn't say anything shitty to anyone. Like I was disappointed that I let you down because we were supposed to finish the backyard. So I felt bad about that.
And I didn't even know that you were drinking because I remember the first time I realized you actually kept it pretty under wraps because the first time I realized that you were a little bit schwasty was when we got back on the pontoon, like we were leaving the party.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, how do you have a Truly? We didn't come over here with any Trulies. and you were like, oh, it's Lauren's. And I'm like, who's Lauren? She's like, I'm not sure. It's someone I think who lives here, or maybe it's his girlfriend. I don't know. I'm not really sure, but it was like my 5th one. I was like, your 5th one?
Yeah. I
They're
hammered
not
in
yours.
5 in like what, an hour and a half?
Yeah, it was like super quick.
So that was that incident. And then late August, I think, August 17th, actually, I think it was. We went to a friend's house and I drank too much. I was supposed to only have a couple. And my Frisbee partner or whatever game we were playing, I was like, hey, I need you to go get one of these out of the fridge and then wait until I tell you to, and then we're going to switch and you're going to have it open for me. Like, I remember orchestrating this whole thing. So again, big red flag.
Right.
Like, if you're having to orchestrate this game of like, and it was tough because like there were probably 20 people there.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone was drinking, everyone was having fun, but like I just go so fast and I don't know when to stop. Like, I don't know the cutoff point, because by 2 you're feeling good and you're like, well, I want to keep feeling good. Anyway, that was a very bad night. I ended up getting in a fight with someone I really, really cared about, and it was super juvenile and super stupid. And I was so embarrassed. Like, I remember that next morning, I was mortified that I was behaving the way I was. And I was like, this is it. I'm tired of waking up and having to apologize for the way I behaved. And I only carry myself without dignity or self-dignity or self-respect when I'm drinking.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that is the only time in my life where those go out the window. And I'm at a point in my life, I don't want to behave in a way where I don't have self-dignity and self-respect. And I also don't want to keep hurting people that I care about. And so I kind of knew that was it. Like, I had known for a while, I had seen the patterns, and I think because I was drinking less, it was easier to see.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I would drink, like, it was very clear there was a problem. And I remember going to have coffee with my friend Nancy, who has been sober for a very long time. She's also a psychologist. And so I remember saying, hey, can you meet me for coffee? I think I need to quit drinking and I need to talk to someone about it. And she's like, sure. So she asked me a couple of questions and I answered them. And like, we were talking through it, and she said, Nancy's a straight shooter. And I love her for that. And I think that's why I reached out to her, because I knew she would give it to me straight if I needed to hear it. And she said, if I'm being honest, some of the things you're describing are red flags that there is a drinking problem. And I was like, okay. And so we talked through it. And, she offered for me to go to an AA meeting, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But I remember that was like it. I knew it was it. I knew I had to be done. Not temporarily, not a break. Like, I had to be done forever. At first, it was super easy. It was super easy because I was determined at that point. Like, I am very strong-willed, and Bethiam will say one of the things that she loves most about me is when I like put my mind to something, I do it. And so I was like, I'm done. So we got rid of all the alcohol in the house, and I did go to one AA meeting. And while I will say everyone was super kind, really caring, really supportive, I shared my story, it just wasn't for me. It didn't feel aligned with how I was trying to do this journey.
Yeah, because I was gonna say, like, the way you quit wasn't like, I guess you didn't seem like you were like, oh man, I'm gonna need a major support network. You were like, I'm making this decision, and this is how it's gonna be. And so I think maybe that setting is more helpful for people who do want a bigger support system in that way.
Yeah, I think it's a little tricky because I don't know how to explain it, but it potentially could have been one of two things at that time. It could have been, I've made this decision. This is my journey. Like, I'm going to do it my own way. But it also could have been denial a little bit. Like, I don't need anyone. I can do this on my own. And so it could have teetered on that line, I guess. And someone did say that to me. They're like, at some point you will need help. Like, at some point you will fall off the wagon. At some point this will happen. And so that got in my head a little bit, because I was like, well, am I being stubborn? And like, I do need to be a part of this. But I committed to myself that if it got to that point, then of course I would, like, even if that didn't feel right for me in AA meeting, I would go to counseling. I would do whatever. Like, it's the same with depression. I'm honest enough with myself that I know if I needed help, I would get it. And I've been very grateful to this point that I haven't needed that support. So it's just interesting territory. And I think it's different for everyone, but it wasn't for me.
So one thing that I would say is different too in your journey with alcohol is that now that you are sober, it doesn't seem to bother you when other people are drinking. Because I know that that's something that, like, the people in our lives have been very great about it. And they're like, does it bother you? If I have a drink, are you okay with that? They've been very respectful in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that that's something that doesn't necessarily bother you.
It's not like I made it this big deal. Like, no one around me can have it.
Right.
And not to dismiss, like, some people cannot be around alcohol. I'm not dismissing that. But for me, it just was like, I think people were waiting to see if it was weird. And then when it wasn't, they were like, oh. And it wasn't always that case. So just to give like the high level view of my journey of sobriety, like I said, the first couple of months, I was like, done, stubborn, gonna get through it, like non-negotiable. And then month 3, I wouldn't say I started to crave it, but like I started to miss it. And then month 4 and 5 by far were my worst months. Like month 4 and 5 were horrible.
I would say you started to crave it or miss it, though. Like, it was like situation based, because I remember
Yes.
it was like,
Yeah.
oh, I want to cut the grass and drink a beer.
Yeah. And so what I said to Beth Ann, we were like talking about this a little bit earlier with alcohol, when you get rid of it, like it's not in your life, it's almost like you go through a breakup. And so you have to go through each situation again by yourself, like you would with a breakup. So like I used to love watching basketball and I would get beer and wings. Like that was my thing. So I had to go through my first basketball season without it. I used to love cutting the grass and having a beer. So I had to like go through that first season. So that's where it gets tricky, because your mind is wired like, oh, usually I would have a margarita with tacos, or usually I do this. So you have to almost reprogram and be like, oh, this is when I want a beer, but this is not an option. So month 4 and 5, it wasn't, you're right, it wasn't like all the time, but there were situations. And I remember we went to your Christmas work party. And at first I was fine. And I don't even think we told people I wasn't
No, we
drinking at
didn't.
that point. So I just said, I'll make my own drinks. So at that point, like, it depended who I was around. And with that particular group of people, I knew there would be pressure to drink. Like, they just wouldn't understand. So I was like, I'll make my own drinks. Or no, maybe I said I was Dee Dee that night. That's what it was. There was one night that I said, I will make my own drinks. And then the other night, I was the Dee Dee. Whatever. Christmas party, I was fine until everyone else around me got drunk. Like 20, 30 people at this party. And all of a sudden, people are like schwasty, leaning on each other. Not everyone, but a lot of people. And I immediately was like, I need to go. Like, I can't be here. Can't do this. And you were in the middle of a conversation. And I remember you were over there talking to these people, and I was getting triggered. And I was actually talking to Kyle, and he was talking about something very sensitive to him. And I was really like, normally I am like in tune, dialed in, empathetic, compassionate. And I was really trying to hear him, but I was like, I've got to get the fuck out of here. Like, I can't focus. I can't listen. And by that point, I start to escalate. And when I finally can talk to you, I'm like, we need to go. We said we were leaving by 9. It's 9:00. And I forget, you wanted to stay for some reason.
I was giving out gifts.
Oh, yeah.
I
That's
was in
right.
charge of kind of coordinating the.
Yeah, because
the
normally if I am like triggered by something, I'm like, we need to go. You're like, got it. So we couldn't leave right away. So I remember like feeling really angry. And actually, on our way to the party, or when we were getting ready, I texted Nancy and I said, why do I feel angry that I can't drink tonight? Like, I've been totally fine, and now I'm pissed that everyone else gets to and I can't. That's just part of the process, because I just wanted to feel normal, quote unquote. And I was like, I have to go to this party. I don't even get to have fun. Everyone else gets to have fun.
And I think that gets tricky too, because for me in that situation, I hadn't had that much. I didn't understand, because I mean, we had been through like 5 months. You stopped drinking in July and this was Christmas. So we had gone all these months and you
But the difference was we were in holiday season mode. So that's where everyone has parties.
Yeah, no,
Everyone
and
starts
I totally
drinking.
get that, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying at the time there was no communication of that because I don't think you knew that
No,
either. And
I didn't
so
know till later.
it
Yeah.
was very abrupt for me when I was like, what did I do wrong? All I had was 2 drinks and like you aren't mad at me any other time. Like I don't understand
Mhm.
what's happening now. And like you said, like you didn't realize till later that it was a problem and why it was a problem and all of that. And so sometimes like in the moment you can't exactly articulate it, but that's what's happening. And so we had to work through that.
Well, and I just had to realize what it was and then like put some boundaries up around parties. And so it's almost like once I identified it, I didn't feel like that again. Like we were able to go to parties, people could drink, I was fine. So it was almost like that rush of emotion and feeling. And then I had to work through it and I was okay. So month 4 and 5 was the hardest. I would say by the time I hit 6 months, I was good. And like you said, once in a great while, it'll be like, oh man, I used to love having a beer, or like I used to love this whiskey, but we talk about it and it's not weird. I make you margaritas all the time. Like I make you your drinks. That doesn't bother me. When we're around people, it doesn't bother me. So for me, I like knew where the peaks and valleys were, and I feel like I'm far enough on the other side that I'm not tempted and I don't have cravings and I don't honestly, I don't fucking miss it. When I am hanging out with people that are drinking, I'm like, ooh, buddy, you're going to feel like shit tomorrow. And I never, ever, ever in my life have to wake up hungover again.
True,
And I
unless
love
you
that.
eat a lot of sugar. And then
Yes.
it's basically like
It
the same
does
effect.
feel like a hangover.
So if someone is listening to you now and they're kind of identifying different things that may be true for them as well, and they're thinking maybe that they need to maybe try out the sober life or even just dip their toes into what it might be like to say no to a drink in a social setting or whatever the case may be for them, what would you suggest they do? Like what are the first steps in trying out sobriety, I guess?
I think the first step is acknowledging it's going to be uncomfortable. No matter how you look at it, if you are a social drinker and that's your norm, it's going to feel weird the first couple of times saying, no, I'm not drinking, or no, I'm not drinking tonight. Or, you know, some people, like I said, will say like, I'm making my own drinks because they don't want to deal with the shame or the judgment or whatever's going to come after. So really it's just knowing that it's going to be uncomfortable and it's going to take some practice. That being said, I will say you don't owe anyone anything that you're not ready to share. For me, like I said, there were certain groups of people I was like, I don't owe them anything and they're just gonna like make fun of me about it. And so I'm not ready to tell them that I'm done drinking because I don't feel like I owe them that. That's for me. There were other people right off the bat I would be like, hey, just so you know, like I'm done drinking, I'll bring my own drinks or whatever. And so I feel like it's so uncomfortable that you might feel the need to be like, I'm not ever drinking again. You know, like it's just so weird. Like, do I oversay it or do I like go under the radar? So you have to just practice and figure out what feels comfortable for you. And another trick. So I guess right now we're in the middle of a pandemic, right? So it's a little,
I guess, yeah.
it's a little different. So the tips I would give if you are being social is find a drink you can replace for drinking. So when I would go to visit friends, like we go to a bonfire, we go over for dinner, I would just bring my own fizzy drinks. And it was usually La Croix or bubbly or something like that, because then you're not put in a position where like if everyone's drinking and you don't have something else to drink, you might be tempted. You're just like, nope, I've already got my drinks. Like I'm cool, and put it in a fun glass. Like I did that for I don't know how long. And sometimes I still do. I have like a plastic fake wine glass in the camper that I'll put fizzy water in. I'll put a lemon in it, a lime, or mocktails are really awesome. Like Beth will have a margarita. I will have a mocktail margarita. When we were going out to eat, you can try a mocktail and say, you know, can you make this daiquiri mojito margarita into a mocktail? Hip places will know. Some places are like, can you tell me what that means? And you say, I want the drink as close as it can be to the original. I just can't have the alcohol. And so start to experiment with that. Like, what is your replacement drink of choice? what mocktails do you want to try? Try mocktail recipes at home if you're in quarantine.
They also have full like mocktail lounges now.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're near a city, typically they'll have options
Yeah.
for non-alcoholic.
Yeah, and there's full on bars now that are sober bars. And
Yeah.
so literally you go in, the bartender will make you like there's no alcohol in the entire place, but you can still dance, you can still have fun. So really it's finding a replacement drink, it's trying out mocktails. For me, I wrote down my reason why. Like my reason why I am sober curious, the reason I don't want to drink again is because XYZ. So I think having a why is really important. And before that, I guess you kind of have to do some soul searching and see like, are there red flags? Are there patterns of addiction? Have you woken up and you've had to blanket apologize to people like, I don't know what I did last night, but I'm sorry. Like, kind of be the inspector in your own life and say, do I have a problem with alcohol? Because like we said, society normalizes it and you really, really have to challenge it. And I will say this, when I decided to quit, I started listening to The Naked Brain by Annie something, a podcast. And I related to that because she wasn't like, I'm an alcoholic and I need to stop drinking. She was like, why do I drink? And like, what would it be like if I didn't drink? It was just very from a point of curiosity. And she ends up like doing all of this research, and alcohol is very bad for your brain, very bad for your brain. And for those of you that struggle with anxiety, you should listen to this podcast because there's actually chemicals in alcohol is a depressant, right? So it brings your body down. And so your body doesn't understand that that's a false stimulant, like it's fake. So it thinks you're crashing. And so it pushes up to bring you back up. And guess what happens? The alcohol wears out of your system, and then you're still going through the roof, which is why you have anxiety the next day, because your body was naturally trying to bring you back up from the depressive state. So listen to that podcast. That's where I started. I listened to the podcast. I got rid of alcohol in the house, and I was like, this is my journey. This is what I'm going to do. And it might not always be fun. You might lose some friends. You might have awkward conversations, but I will tell you that you will find out who your people are. And that's a lot of what we teach. A lot of the stuff we teach, we're like, this is going to be uncomfortable and it's not going to feel good. But at the end of the day, black and white, you will know who your people are.
Yeah, I was just going to say, when I was in college for a little bit, I guess it was right after college, I went through a stint where I didn't drink, and it literally, there was no reason. I just didn't feel like it. And I was, 22, 23, and there was a whole host of weddings. And so, you would go to 7 weddings in a summer, right? And so everyone at every wedding, everyone's drinking. And it's so interesting when people aren't secure in themselves and then they are hyper focused on what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so it shouldn't be a problem. I would say that this is something to look for in the crew that you run with. It shouldn't be a problem that you don't have a drink, or it shouldn't be a problem that your drink is just water with lemon in it. Like, no one should bring that up.
Mm-hmm.
And furthermore, they shouldn't bring it up more than once. I remember how many times people were so like, why aren't you drinking? You should drink. Come on, drink with us. I'm like,
because it makes them uncomfortable.
Right. And I'm like, I don't want to drink. Why is this concerning you? Like, I'm fine right now. I don't need a drink. You have a drink. So I don't understand like why you're so concerned. And I was so fed up with having to answer the question, because then they'd be like, are you okay? Are you dying? Is it part of your religion? Are you pregnant? And I'm like, no, I literally just don't want alcohol right now.
Those are not your people.
And so I was so tired of having to have that conversation at every wedding I went to. I started getting, kind of like you, I started getting water in a glass with a skinny straw.
Yep.
And a lemon and lime on the side.
Looks like vodka soda.
Right. And when people are like, oh, what are you drinking? I would say a Lake Michigan cocktail. And they're like, oh, cool. It's literally,
Doesn't that
it's
just
water.
Mean water.
Yes.
No one realized that.
No, because they were drinking. And so like, if you just say like, oh, I am drinking, I am like you, they fucking leave you alone. But if
Yeah.
you say like, no, I just want this healthier choice for my body,
Yeah.
they then feel guilty that they're doing this thing. And like, even just saying, I just don't want to drink
Mhm.
was never a good enough answer. And that was a pretty good indication that I needed to run with a different crew if you couldn't accept that I just simply didn't want to drink at this wedding.
Well, and it forces them to look at their relationship with alcohol. And so it makes them feel like you think you're better than them. And they're probably not ready to examine that relationship with alcohol. So I lost some friends, air quotes, when I quit drinking. And they probably needed to go anyway. And I have the best group of people in my life right now that I ever have. And it was almost like once I didn't cut them out, like they kind of just dissipated and removed themselves. And
Well, it's really because you weren't going to the functions anymore. I mean, you
well,
weren't
that's what I
going,
mean. Like
yeah,
I
you
quit
weren't going to the
partying.
parties
Yeah.
and all of that.
Yeah. And I think like, so we mentioned earlier that I can be around people who are drinking and it doesn't bother me. I will say I occasionally get triggered if like everyone is belligerently drunk and I'm the only sober one, because I'm like, hey guys, this isn't fun for me. Like I just became your parent and you don't have to tolerate anything you don't want to. So there might be times where you're like, you know what? Everyone's drunk, whatever, like they're having fun and I'm okay. But there might be other times where you're like, this is too much. This is my threshold. I'm done. And that's okay. It's an ebb and flow. And so I know not to expect a consistent thing each time. Like 98% of the time I'm fine when other people drink, but when they like get sloshy, it's not fun. Like when you're sober, it's not fun. And I was just thinking like you and I bartended a wedding when I was sober. And I remember people being like, how are you doing that? And I was like, what do you mean? They're like, how are you bartending? You're sober. And I was like, yeah, I'm not drinking it. I'm just giving it to other people.
A sip for me, a sip for you.
That's the game old Courtney would have played. So yeah, I mean, and I have lots of other tips that I'm happy to share for anyone who's interested. And it's actually been really cool because I at random will get messages from people that I had no idea heard my story, and they will send me like this paragraph of, you inspired me. I've been sober for 5 months. I've lost 25 pounds. Like just all of these stories. And a lot of those people are older than me. And they're like, I'm so grateful. Like you were so brave. I started noticing these patterns and like realizing that, you know, so what I would call myself, I wouldn't say I'm an alcoholic. I don't know if that's true or not, but I would say I am like a social binge drinker. That is my problem.
Well, and I think to your point of the people that reach out to you and say like, I'm so glad that I learned about this and I'm trying it myself too.
Yeah.
Is like we kind of mentioned earlier, it's almost like, well, an alcoholic is a level 10. I'm only like a level 2. So I clearly don't have a problem. But then you see someone that you know and love and care about and know they're a good human and they're admitting I have struggles with alcohol. And then you're like, oh, so you can be a normal person. You can be loving and kind and really smart. You can be all these things and yet you can still struggle with alcohol. Oh, in that case, maybe I should look at my relationship with alcohol. And I think it just makes it a little bit more relatable so that it's not like, oh no, people with alcohol issues are over there and like all my people are over here and I wouldn't possibly be in that camp because, you know, that's the extreme. And it's like, well, when you know someone that you love and they're admitting it, it's a bit easier to kind of look in the mirror.
Well, and like I said, I think there is a blanket of societal norm around drinking. So like if you, for example, were walking down the street and just randomly screaming at people and saying profane things, you would be like, oh, I think there's a problem and I should probably go to counseling and work through this because it's very obvious and that's not socially acceptable. But when you're in the midst of something that is completely socially acceptable, especially we normalize it during college, right? Like that's what kids do. They party, they go off to college. When you're trying to see something that's not quite as obvious, like fuck, it took me how many years I was 31 before I quit.
Mhm.
And if I'm honest with myself, looking back, starting at 23, there were red flags, but I just brushed them off because I was just being a college kid. And so, like, I would say have the courage to examine your relationship with alcohol. Does that mean everyone has a social drinking problem? No. A lot of people can have a couple of drinks or be in social settings and be fine, but at least have the courage and give yourself that gift of looking through the lens of like, could I have a better life? And honestly, I am so happy. Like, I am the happiest I have ever been. And I love, love, love being sober. At first, it's a little intense because one thing you'll hear is that you feel everything. You feel everything, the good stuff, the bad stuff. Like, for the first time, you're really feeling everything. There's no grabbing a beer after a hard day. There's no, relaxing and having a beer. Like, you really, really have to be present with yourself. And sometimes it's great and sometimes it's uncomfortable. But like, we should live a life that is like completely transparent and not numbed in any way.
So, last question. Has anyone made you feel shame or uncomfortable for making the decision you did surrounding alcohol?
There was a comment that was said to me before I quit drinking. So this was like a pre-shame comment before I quit drinking. And so this was actually a peer pressure situation. I was not planning to drink that night. And then everyone else kept drinking. And honestly, there have been this is also like another red flag. There have been 2 situations in my life where I was so uncomfortable not drinking that I did it just because I felt so uncomfortable. Everyone else was drinking and it was unbearable to be sober at that point in both of these situations because everyone was so fucking annoying. So I was like, you know what? I'll have a couple drinks because you guys are wanting me to drink and I'm like, this is not fun for me. And they said to me, this is the Courtney we miss. Like, you're so much more fun when you're drinking. And I was like, that feels pretty shitty because that tells me I'm not good enough when I'm sober. I'm not fun enough. And so really good indication I don't need those people in my lives. But that was one that like didn't feel good. And then the other one actually didn't bother me. It bothered you.
Yeah.
I laugh about it because it was just such an off the wall comment that
will not be repeated here.
It will not be repeated. But basically, I went through this phase where I like found alcohol-free wine, like alcohol-free red wine. And I did get this question on TikTok. The 2 questions were, did you have a hard time not drinking during quarantine? And I was like, no, because I was already on the other side of it when quarantine hit. 2, do you like totally stay away from all alcoholic drinks or do you sometimes drink like the NA drinks? And my answer was for the first year, I did not dabble in any of the non-alcoholic drinks because I was like, this might be a slippery slope. I need to get to a year and just see where I'm at. And then I did try this alcohol-free wine by Frey, and it was a red. And I really liked it, except it made my stomach super upset. So I had to stop drinking it. But in this situation, someone asked, like, are you still not drinking? And I said, no, I'm not. And I said, but I found this red wine that I really like that's alcohol free. Like, do you know anywhere nearby that would have this? I don't even know how to conclude this.
You really can't. I mean, basically the person was like, that's not wine. That's expletive.
Yeah. Like, I don't drink that blank juice. I remember going, I can't believe you just said that out loud. And Beth was like,
I did say, I can't believe
Yeah.
you just said that. And I was like,
Yeah.
that's disgusting.
yeah. And so Beth was actually pissed for me because it was a form of shame, but it didn't offend me because I was just like, what a fucking stupid thing to say. Like, who says that? Read the room. I don't think people can make you feel shame unless you allow them to. And for me, I'm so proud of the fact that I don't drink anymore and that that's not a part of who I am. And there's so many other things that make me me. And I'm level 10 Courtney without alcohol. So even if people were to try, I think that one comment when I was still drinking stung pretty deep. But that was also when I was still surrounding myself with people that weren't actually friends. So No.
Well, thank you for being transparent today with yet another struggle. We have just really loaded these first episodes
We
up.
should call this
Jeez, oh,
Courtney's
Pete's.
counseling corner.
Yeah, so we have been tackling the tough issues because we often say that we try to be as transparent with you as possible because life is not an Instagram feed and it doesn't look perfectly
good. Yeah.
curated like that. And so why are we pretending to have a perfectly curated life when it's not? And so we want you to know that we're just like you and we have some of the same struggles. And, you know, if our journeys can help in any way, help you get through something or make a realization or improve or build your best life in any way, we certainly want to be on your side in that. So hopefully this episode helped someone today. Courtney looks like she has something else to say.
I'm not done talking. I have two more things. One, the goal is awareness. Even if anything we talk, like how many people have gone through their lives and they've never stopped to think, do I have depression or do I have a problem with alcohol? Like, even if we can just bring awareness for you to do a quick checkpoint with yourself, because a lot of these issues totally blindsided me. And so that's the goal, is to like check in with yourself, because you do deserve the best quality of life. And sometimes we don't even know what those barriers are. And then the second thing I would say that I should have said earlier is, if you think that you're struggling with alcohol and you don't have an objective way to like figure that out, like you might be too close or you don't know how to examine it, you can always talk to a counselor too and just say, hey, like I want to examine my relationship with alcohol. I don't know how to do that. Can you help me? And we have a little Facebook support group for like the 10 people and I that, you know, some of them are just sober curious, meaning like, what would it be like to be sober? And some have actually quit drinking, and it's just a little Facebook group called Sober Sisters that we cheer each other on and have good talks. So that's all.
And have good talks. Well, thank you for spending some time with us this Saturday. We will be back at you in 2 weeks because we have cut down our production schedule on our podcast because we are busy producing content for our behind the scenes paid membership, Adventure Seekers. So if you'd like more information about that, you can DM us on any social platform or head over to our website at lifewithbethandcourt.com. You can also head to our website to pick up the show notes from this and other episodes before this. And we can't wait to come back at you next time. Until then, keep building your best life.
Bye, guys.
What's the name of this episode?
I don't know. I've been sober, 'cause there ain't no hangover like you. That wasn't my best singing because I feel self-conscious because our door is open and I heard people's feet walking, so I just held back.
So the name of the episode would be
Suddenly Sober? No, that's like Suddenly Susan, which was something from the 90s. Sober Curious. Ooh, there's a spider on the wall.
You can definitely
Can
pause
you get me
to
a
get it.
tissue?
I want my own camper right now.
You think I could flick this booger all the way over to you and hit you?
You want to talk about that one time you flicked a booger on our house as a grown adult in Manorhood? And when we were moving, I said, "What's that?"
I didn't flick it onto the wall. I flicked it into the universe, and it happened to stick on the wall.
As a grown adult, you were
Mhm.
definitely already over 30 years old when you
Yep.
flicked a booger onto our wall.
Yep.
So what's the name of this episode?
I don't know. It's going to have to be undecided.
It can't be undecided because I have to intro this. What it's like to be sober?
No.
What it's like to be 30 and sober?
Yeah, I was going to say like sober at 30. When did I get sober? Year and a half ago. 31
and a half.
and a half. Just say 31. Sober at 31. Welcome to another episode of Life
I
with
literally
Beth and
want to
Court.
pinch your tits off.
And I'm a
You're
grudge
so-
about it.
You're so antagonistic toward me right now. And I definitely feel like pushing you down our 3 stairs.
Sweetheart. Did everyone hear that in case Beth's on Dateline one day and I'm not because I'm dead because she pushed my body downstairs?
I said 3. There's actually only 2 stairs.
That
to this
could do a lot
camper.
of damage. I could break my neck. I hope you feel
Really?
sad inside. Yeah. Have you seen me trip down them on my own? It's a very dangerous game.
Well, therefore, you just admitted that you very well could have just tripped.
You're disgusting. Start the episode.
Welcome back to another episode of Life with Beth and Court. I'm Beth. You're terrible. I just want to record this.
Okay.
I'm like 4 seconds from turning the
First,
Zoom off.
I need you to put a positive enema up your bum hole because I can't work under these conditions.
You are so annoying to me right now.
I am sorry that you feel that way.
Gosh, just be less annoying to me.
Don't know.
I'm going to start this intro over. May I go?
Yeah.
Welcome back to another episode of Life is Stop with Your Face.
Put a smile on your face. Make the world a better place. Put a smile on your face. What you gonna do? So what you gonna do? Will that make you be nice?
May I intro our podcast?
Yes, you may.
For real.
Yeah, I'm getting ready to say my part.
The only part I've needed you to say, which is I'm Court.
Yeah, I have to prepare.